Welcome to each and every one of you. It's time to get started, and I think by now we have everyone their audio up and running, so you will be able to join us. My name is Ingun Bol, and I'm the founder of Female Wave of Change, and really want to welcome you tonight for this really special online wave of Female Wave of Change. Mariska will be talking a lot about blockchain and Bitcoin, and I don't know about you, but I was just watching my wallet, what was going on there, and what the situation was of my Bitcoins and things like that. I don't know if you all already have Bitcoins or are involved with Bitcoin, whatever, but I heard Mariska speak a couple of weeks ago on our global kickoff of the Female Wave of Change, and she opened up some windows. So it was really exciting what was going on. I have some, I will start just to give you a little bit information about the Female Wave of Change and why we're doing this. But just before we get started, please, during the webinar, during the presentation of Mariska, all microphones will be muted, except, of course, Mariska's microphone. If you have any questions or feedback or whatever, please use the chat box so that we will be able to get your information back to Mariska. You can use your camera. I see there's already a lot of people who are getting their camera started. That's great. We will record this webinar. So if you do not want your face on screen during the recordings, please make sure that you block that you block the recordings, that you block your video. I'm sorry. So who are we and why are we doing this? Female Wave of Change. There's a lot going on right now in the world, and this is a world of change, and there's so much happening. And why we started this is because we saw that the rapid change right now will reach out into every corner of society, and it will it will affect you in your life, and even if you don't want it, it will happen. So the Female Wave of Change was started, one, to create awareness, but also because we think that in this world of change, we really need this feminine energy, these feminine values to get our voices heard and to really make a change. So that is why we started Female Wave of Change. Actually, in the beginning of this year, in this year 2017, we have been growing really fast, and we love it. What are we doing, and how are we doing it? What we really want to do is, besides create awareness of what is going on, we want to connect. We want to build bridges. And we want to do it globally. You know, this is a world, and you know, I'm a dreamer. I want to see a world without boundaries, and I really think we can do it. And especially in connecting all these people, and it's not just the women, it is man and female. We want to build these bridges, and not just between women, but also we're already connecting with a lot of global organizations, and we're very proud of that it is happening really fast. Let's see. We want to share knowledge and experience, and that is also what we will be doing tonight. There's so much knowledge here, and we all can learn from each other. And whether you're a captain of industry, whether you are a very successful entrepreneur, or you just are very focused on getting things started in your community, we can learn from each other, and that is what we want to do here. We want to share this knowledge and experience. We want to embrace change and transform it into new opportunities together. We will be facing a lot of challenges, and Mariska also, she will define a challenge, especially in her field of expertise tonight. But we want to embrace that change and transform it into new opportunities. We really need those new opportunities, and we can do that together, especially on a global platform. So connecting, building our network, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, just connect, reach out, respond, post. We want to know who you are, and we want to know what you're doing, because I already saw that already in this call there's a lot of different nationalities. There's a lot of people from all over the world, so please reach out and show us who you are and what you're doing. We want to inspire, share knowledge and experience, but we will be doing that on our online waves. Well, you have registered for this wave about blockchain and Bitcoin, but we will be doing online waves, webinars, global webinars, each and every week. So next week it is about education. The week after that it's about health. The week after that it's about circular economy and things like that. So there's a lot of topics that we will be discussing together. And there will be waves from different areas in the world. We already have a network, and we have ambassadors and wave makers in many different places. So we really want to get everyone involved and hear their stories. The next thing is, of course, we want to create those new opportunities. And of course, you can create new opportunities with someone who is living in your own city. But what we want to do is to create all those new opportunities and solve all these issues with people from all over the world. We have built a platform on PartUp. That's where you can find us in the tribe Female Wave of Change. So reach out, and you already see small that you get an idea of what is going on. We have something about education. There's something going on blockchain. There's online ways that you can future-proof organizations, technology. So there's a lot of issues that we can discuss together. So please get involved and make sure that you join us on PartUp as well, and that we find those new solutions for all things going on. Well, what I would like to do now is, of course, you can become our friend and our best friend. You can find all that information on our website. But for tonight, the floor is for Mariska with all her information on blockchain and Bitcoin. And what I already told you a couple of weeks ago, we heard her speak at our global kickoff here in the Netherlands. And she only had 15 minutes to share all her knowledge, but we knew that there was so much more. So Mariska, the floor is yours. I will stop sharing my screen and you start yours, and we'll just get things started.
Awesome. Thank you, Ingun. Let me go to my PowerPoint. And of course, I have to move some things around. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's activated. Okay. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Then I'll move my control bar to the top. And let's get started, because if we're talking about change, well, Bitcoin, that definitely is change. Bitcoin, that's also called the Internet of Money. And what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin basically is a peer-to-peer payment system that is borderless, neutral, immutable, open to everyone. You don't need permission to have access to Bitcoin. It's decentralized and anyone can innovate. And these are characteristics that are really important to a global cryptocurrency blockchain. Bitcoin was announced on an email list in 2008, an email list for computer geeks. And on January 3rd, 2009, the world changed because the first Bitcoin was mined. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a decentralized network of computers that all validate, confirm, and register transactions. The registration is done in blocks of data, and these blocks require a hash, a code. That code must have a specific format, and each block only consists of transaction data, the hash of a previous block, and then a random piece of data that is called a nonce to come up with a new hash. It is impossible to know the hash up front, so each computer, and there are 10,000 or more computers in the Bitcoin network, are using another nonce to try to hash the code with that correct format. The first computer to find that correct hash is then rewarded by the blockchain with, at this point in time, 12.5 Bitcoin. Back in 2009, when the blockchain started, those were 50 Bitcoins as a reward. And that was an incentive because it needed to be very attractive for people to have their computers running and to validate and register all these transactions. And as a reward, they started with 50 Bitcoin. About 4 years later, there was a first halving, meaning that the 50 Bitcoins were halved into 25 Bitcoins. And mid-2016, that happened again. So now we are rewarded with 12.5 Bitcoin as an incentive, because the more miners are active in the Bitcoin network, the more secure that network is. So the incentive is really an important part of a blockchain. When that hash has been found, that hash block is communicated with all other computers in the network, and they all accept and register it as the final block. And then they start mining the next block. So that action is repeated over and over again. Mining of a block takes about 10 minutes, and that 10 minutes, that's called the heartbeat of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the digital currency, but Bitcoin also is the network, and Bitcoin also is the blockchain. The currency is an application of Bitcoin, the very first application. Now, why Bitcoin? We all remember the financial crisis of 2008, banks collapsing, and banks that were saved by bailouts, which we as taxpayers will have to pay for, and the housing bubble that was created by these banks. The banks failed us over and over again, yet they only were fined. No one was ever sent to jail, and they moved on. It was business as usual. The same that happened that led to the 2008 crisis is happening again, just in a little different form, but the first banks in Europe have already collapsed. Our financial system is run by institutions that no longer can be trusted. Bitcoin was invented as peaceful resistance against these institutions that control our money. The world is demonetizing. Some countries maximize payments in cash. If you want to make a payment for 2,000 euro or more, that will be illegal because the country has decided that you can maximum pay 1,500 euros in cash. That is happening. That is reality. And some countries took banknotes out of circulation. It happened in India. It will happen in Europe, where the largest euro note will be taken out of circulation. It is happening in Australia, and in more and more countries, you will see this occur. Banks and governments want to know exactly what we pay, when we pay, and to whom we pay. It's total control, because he who controls the money controls the people. And I don't know how it is with you, but personally, I really feel very strong about my privacy. And I don't think it's none of the government's business or my bank's business who I would pay and when and for what reason, how often. That's my business, not theirs. That's why I feel so very strong about Bitcoin. And there are more reasons why Bitcoin. Right now, 5% of the global population owns 95% of all wealth. while 95% of the entire global population owns 5% of all wealth. There's a little disbalance over here. 2.5 billion people are unbanked, and 4 billion people are either unbanked or poorly banked with very limited access to banking services. And that's just because they were born in a country or in a region where it was not possible for their parents to travel 50 miles to register their birth. So here they are, a living human being at a bank office asking to opening a bank account. And since they are not in any systems, they are denied a bank account. If you are denied a bank account, you are denied being part of an economy. If you are denied being part of an economy, you are condemned to poverty. And that's totally unfair, just because you were born in a situation that registration of your birth wasn't doable for your parents. Bitcoin banks the unbanked. Bitcoin is offering them a way out of poverty. What do people do when they suddenly can become part of an economy? They will find ways to make sure that their children will have education, that they will have a roof over their head, that they will have food on the table, that there no longer will be poverty, that there will be a future. That is what people will do, especially in these poor countries. So Bitcoin is offering the poor people a way out of poverty. And by a simple app or even just a phone that can send and receive a text message, they now, by Bitcoin, have access to a global economy, the economy of Bitcoin. How powerful is that? Bitcoin is controlled by the Bitcoin network, by the people, not by banks, not by institutions, not by governments. Institutions were created to solve problems on a local level, on a regional level. We live in a global society now, and we need to solve global problems and offer global solutions. Bitcoin enables that. A new economy is emerging around Bitcoin. We have exchanges, we have wallet providers. And with a Bitcoin wallet, you do not have a sort of a bank account to store your Bitcoins, but instead you own your own bank. And there is no minimum age to own your own bank. You can have your child of 9 years old starting their own coin and saying, hey, this is my bank. Or when they just have a Bitcoin app, they own their own bank and they can hold their own coins. That is amazing when you start to realize that. Only you control your Bitcoins, no one else. Except when you hold your Bitcoins in an account at an exchange. That's an external service. Technically, they own your coins. You only can access them. It's similar to a bank account. You put your money in the bank and the bank promises you to look after it. The same as with an exchange. If you open up an account with an exchange, you are parking your Bitcoin at that exchange and the exchange promises you to really take good care of it. A Bitcoin wallet on your mobile device gives you access to the private keys to your Bitcoin. The private keys is a coding that is related to the Bitcoin that you own. So what is in that wallet, in fact, is not your Bitcoin. It's just these private keys. The Bitcoins itself will never leave the blockchain. They are always there. But you need those private keys to access your Bitcoin, to be able to transfer them. With an account at an exchange, that exchange holds those private keys. You will never have them. You will simply have a login. You will never have those private keys. So that's really important to be aware of. The Bitcoin blockchain cannot be hacked. It's impossible. All the quantum computers in the world do not have enough computing power to hack the blockchain. If you would want to hack the blockchain, first of all, you would have to wait for a moment that no one is processing anything. Because while you are trying to change history, they are creating new presence, new future. And since all these blocks are interlinked by these hash codes, if you change one, you will have to change every block that's coming after it. That's impossible. It's undoable. That could only be done if 51% of the entire Bitcoin network would turn corrupt. And that is not very likely to happen because they would give up their incentive. The mantra that I think everyone who is considering getting involved with Bitcoin or is involved with Bitcoin needs to know by heart. It's something that you really need to be fully aware of. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin. If you do not own those private keys, you do not own your Bitcoin. And where if your PIN code on your bank card gets blocked, you simply walk in that branch office and say, oh, I got a problem. My PIN code is blocked. Can you unblock it? You have no one to turn to with your Bitcoin wallet. So if you don't keep your keys very secure and someone else is using them and they take your Bitcoins out of your account, there's no one to turn to. It's only your responsibility. So be very careful, use maximum security, be very cautious where you store your private keys. Because in these days, it's very easy to find yourself robbed of a substantial amount. And if you don't store your private keys safely, you might find yourself in the following situation. And this is a true story that's happened to someone that I know. And that's not an ignorant kind of guy. He's very clever, well educated. He installed a Bitcoin wallet on his iPhone. And he is online a lot. So he was using a lot of battery power. And he had extra batteries with him to help him when he was traveling through the day. And he had for about $30,000 of Bitcoin in his wallet. He had run a backup, he had his private keys, and he made a picture of that. And he stored that on the same iPhone. Now, since his battery was running out so quickly every time again, someone recommended to him to put them back to the settings as coming from the factory. And he did that. And he then had to reinstall his Bitcoin wallet because all the apps are gone when you do that restore, that reset to factory settings. And then he realized that the image that he had stored on the same device was gone as well. And there's no one that he can turn to get those keys back. So that was a couple of months ago. And the value of 30,000 then is about twice that amount right now. So you can imagine that that's a very expensive and experience that really is keeping you awake for a couple of nights at least. So be very conscious on where you store your private keys and never do that only on the same device that you're running your app on. If something happens with that device, you will have lost access to your Bitcoin. And with the prices that Bitcoin currently show, and it's very likely that it will go up further, you don't want to take that risk. So not your keys, not your Bitcoin. If we look at the history of money, centuries ago, it was barter. We just exchanged goods for goods. And very often that was food, or it was cattle, like a chicken or a cow or a pig. And it's not that convenient if your money is something that can rot or you can eat because then the money is gone. But it has been used for a very long time. And then we went to coins. And the first time that you paid someone with coins, he said, I rather have those apples or I rather have those bananas. Yeah, but you can buy your apples or your bananas with these coins. He said, well, I still prefer the apples or the coins because that is what they were accustomed to. That was normal. That was familiar. This was new. And everything that's new is kind of scary. But after, I think about 100 years, The coins were accepted by everyone. It was everyday practice, no more barter. Barter was just bought by these coins. And then on a day, instead of paying someone with a coin, you said, you know what? Here you have a piece of paper. And it's just as much value as these coins. And people would look at a person and say, well, I don't know, piece of paper? I prefer those coins, those shiny coins. And again, another 70, 80 years later, everyone was using the banknotes. That was common practice. It had been adopted by the masses. And then we got credit cards, a little piece of plastic. Hey, that's just as good as these notes. I don't know, a piece of plastic? I prefer the banknotes in my back pocket. And it took about 40 years before credit cards got generally accepted. And now try to rent a car if you don't have a credit card. That's virtually impossible. And now we are witnessing the next change. From credit cards to Bitcoin. And again, we see resistance because that is scary. We prefer the credit card. We prefer these banknotes. And yet we live in a period where I feel, and I became a grandma about 7 months ago, that little girl will never have a bank account. That little girl will very likely never use paper money. But Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, that will be everyday practice for her. If I can refer to Europe, where in 2001 we got the euro, I remember the long lines on New Year's Eve with the ATMs to get these first euros. And we kept converting back to the guilder, or the French franc, or the Belgian franc, or the German mark, whatever currency people used to have, we continued to convert back to understand its value. And we kept doing that for a very long time until we stopped doing that, until we finally accepted the euro as our new money. It's a reaction to change that is out of people's comfort zone, and that is terrifying for many. If we can compare Bitcoin with the internet. The internet started in the 80s, and it's just unbelievable. But an email took 15 hours to arrive. 15 hours. Try that right now. And you really had to plug in your computer to your phone line. So your family couldn't reach you anymore because the mobiles weren't invented yet. And that's how we accessed the internet. It took forever for a website to load, and there weren't as many websites as we currently have. But that was the start of the internet. The internet made information available for everyone, and everyone could publish anything. It was without approval that people could have access to information and could provide and share information. The internet is in fact nothing more than data being transmitted. Data of information. And that is also what Bitcoin does. Transmission of data of transactions. So there really is a similarity between Bitcoin and the internet. When the internet came up, companies were terrified to allow their staff to access that evil internet where dangerous information could be found. So they didn't want to expose their personnel to that internet with that public information, because who knows what kind of terrible things might happen. And instead of allowing the borderless and decentralized internet, they invented the intranet. Maybe you have experienced that. I know I have. It was a very boring system where you could only access certain information that the company had decided that was okay for you to have access to. And there was this little chat functionality to chat with your peers. But there was no access anywhere with the external and global internet. Intranet was set up where they would control what information would be available. So, in fact, without all the things that made the internet interesting. It wasn't there. It was just some basic stuff. And eventually, over time, they realized that an intranet only was sort of interesting if it was connected with other intranets. And for that, they needed the internet. So you're back to square one. Nowadays, we cannot imagine a life without the internet, yet it took about 20 years to mass adoption. If we talk about the upcoming internet, we have to look at the dot-com bubble. There were a lot of companies that arose when the internet came up, and they went down. From the ashes of companies in the early days of the internet, new and better companies arose like Google, Facebook, Amazon. And in fact, these are the wealthiest companies that we have right now, and they only exist because of the internet. What also is interesting to realize is that even though a lot of these early hyping companies collapsed, it didn't make the internet go away. So this can be compared with what is happening now. Many companies around the Bitcoin blockchain are popping up, and some already failed miserably. I'm not sure if you ever heard about Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox was an exchange company, and they got hacked because they weren't that good in security, and they lost over 850 million in Bitcoin. Gone. And of course, that was too big a loss for them to carry, so they went bankrupt. But because of what happened with Mt. Gox, that has led to better companies that came up afterwards. And if we look at an exchange like Coinbase, it's still an exchange, but it's a very large one, and they really have their security a lot better organized than Mt. Gox used to have. So these failures from the early days always will help innovate and will help improve and increase security with companies that come later on. So it's all a normal process, but it's very interesting to be aware of where the comparisons are between internet back then and Bitcoin right now. The dot-com bubble didn't make the internet disappear. And whatever exchange gets hacked or things go wrong in services around the blockchain, it will not make the Bitcoin blockchain disappear either. When we have made a comparison between internet and Bitcoin, it also is good to have a closer look at the internet and media. Internet didn't really take anything from the media, but internet enabled businesses to advertise online. So they didn't have to wait for that Saturday edition to come out. They could immediately advertise, and it was a lot less expensive for businesses. So media simply lost their advertising revenues, and because of that, they had to cut expenses. And what's the biggest expense to any company? People, staff. Meaning that they had to get rid of their research companies, their research departments. They had to get rid of quite a few of their reporters. And these were the people that always were doing the verification of facts, the cross-referencing. And by cutting out research departments, there no longer is that verification of facts. Back in my youth, in my childhood, we used to say like, oh, it was on the news, so it must be true. Well, forget about that these days. That no longer is valid. Right now, trainees are sent to a press conference of a larger company, and they make notes, and then they publish what they have made notes of as truth, as a fact. And that's what we're reading in newspapers. That's what we're seeing in the news. That's scary, because that really isn't always the truth. That really isn't always reality. The internet contains massive information, truthful and not truthful. We can no longer rely on media. We turn to the internet to find information ourselves. And on the internet, we can check facts, we can cross-reference, and then decide for ourselves what we will accept as our truth. So right now, there's this saying, there's my truth, there's your truth, and there's the truth. And who knows what truth it's all about? So we really have to be very conscious of that. Excuse me. Now, these media tell us that Bitcoin is used by terrorists, by pedophiles, for drugs transactions and other criminal activities. And that scares the heck out of people. Each Bitcoin, or a fraction of a Bitcoin, in fact can be fully traced. Bitcoin is only pseudo-anonymous. There are no names or personal data on the blockchain, but unique wallet addresses, and each Bitcoin can be exactly tracked to what Bitcoin wallet addresses it has been sent to and where it's coming from. The reality about all this illegal activity is that they are financed in 95% or more of the cases with US dollars, and preferably in cold hard cash. You can make a withdrawal from any ATM and then spend your banknotes without any registration. No registration whatsoever of whom you paid what banknote to. There is no registration like, oh, banknote, $50 with serial number XYZ has been paid to Joe Jones. There isn't. On the blockchain, you know exactly that your Bitcoin was sent from your wallet address to another wallet address. So in fact, Bitcoin could help reduce illegal activities even more than what mainstream media would like people to believe. Now, when Bitcoin value drops, it's all over the news. You can see, oh, Bitcoin crashed 30% in less than 24 hours. Yet there is hardly any attention for the fact it has been the best performing asset in recent years. We also need to be aware that media are controlled by large corporations. In fact, there are only 5 large corporations that own all media channels. And that means that they control what is being broadcasted. And this image really says it all. You are looking at the same message on all these channels. It's sounding a little differently, it's worded a little differently, but the message is the same. And that's how people are brainwashed. And people are fed beliefs that are not their own. And that also is happening about Bitcoin. Large corporations then are connected to the banking institutions. And it's pretty obvious that they do not want people to take their money out of the bank and move it into Bitcoin. So that's why they choose to install fear with people. In Europe, the EU is preparing a directive that enables banks to freeze bank accounts when they fear a bank run may be happening. In order to avoid that, they can simply say, sorry, impossible for you to get your money out. That law has been prepared. It is in Brussels, and it will probably be accepted anytime soon. Media are installing fear with people, fear of Bitcoin. The charities in 2016 have experienced a substantial increase in donations because of Bitcoin. You don't hear that on mainstream media. And this is something good about Bitcoin. Bad people will always abuse systems for bad things. That always has been the case. That will never change. And anything that is new is scary for most people, but it will be abused as well by these bad people. But we shouldn't fear Bitcoin because of that very small percentage that will continue to do bad things, no matter the channels they have available. Because if it isn't Bitcoin, they will find something else. So it's not about Bitcoin, it's about these people that are doing bad things. You cannot link them the way that media are linking them right now to make people believe that Bitcoin is really scary. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin holds a history of immutable records. In fact, it registers the truth. And that's really important. Imagine the applications of cryptocurrency. When we would record maintenance of airplane parts on a blockchain. Right now, if a plane crashes, the first question that everyone asks is, was maintenance in order? Now, if that maintenance is held on a piece of paper, people can simply go to the paper, then fill in the date, like, oh yeah, it was crashed today. Today is November 9th. Yes, we did maintenance November 2nd. And no one will know. If it's in a database, they can go in the database, they can change the record that's in there and no one would know. It's impossible to change that record in the blockchain because of these hash codes. So you will always find the truth because of these records kept on the blockchain. And that's really a big change in our society. Bitcoin inspired others to come up with other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum. What Bitcoin does to money, Ethereum does to economic contracts, and we also call them smart contracts. With blockchain, we can record title of ownership of land, ownership of houses, of property, of vehicles. And since these records are immutable, no one can take your land, no one can take your property, no one can take your car. And it's pretty hard to imagine here in a Western country. But people in Russia, they know better. They have seen their money from their bank accounts being just taken by the government. They have seen their land that their family has been working for decades and decades. And on a bad morning, there was this government official with a piece of paper that said, was very nice that you have worked this land and it now belongs to the state. But we do allow you to continue to work it. And in return for that, you need to pay us an annual sum of money. And there was nothing that these people could do. Blockchain prevents that. Many companies these days are getting into blockchain, and these are private blockchains. And we can compare that to the intranet. And mostly these private blockchains are advised by overpaid consultants because, hey, blockchain is very hot, it's very popular. We can make a lot of money by recommending our clients to start something in blockchain. And we tell them, yeah, just do blockchain. And even banks get into crypto these days. Hey, we are innovative. We do blockchain, but we don't do Bitcoin because blockchain is good, Bitcoin is bad. Well, anyone who says that hasn't understood that the security of the blockchain is being safeguarded by the currency that is rewarded for maintaining that network. So it's absolutely nonsense to say, yes, we do like blockchain, but we do not like the cryptocurrency. If an institution or a few institutions control a blockchain, and then the private keys are compromised, that blockchain no longer is reliable. And in fact, we are expected to trust those institutions, the very same institutions that continue to fail us. If we don't trust them as a bank, when they run their banking systems as they have been doing for decades, why would we suddenly trust them to run a blockchain if their behavior and the way that they try to manipulate everything and anything has stayed the same? The fact that they're using blockchain doesn't change that. And would we trust people with the private keys that could give someone else access to our coins? I don't think so. In fact, with private blockchains where you hold an account in order for them to control your coins, it is simply business as usual. It's exactly the same as continuing to use your bank account with your bank. Bitcoin is a disruptive technology, and that is disruptive to many industries and professions. Companies that understand the potential of Bitcoin embrace it. They will implement it and they will survive. And the rest that is rejecting it, they probably will not survive. And the same happened with the internet. Anyone remember Kodak? Kodak used to be a very large photo company. Kodak no longer exists. They were too late in adjusting when the internet came up, and that ended their lifespan. In a world that has turned us into slaves of debt, Bitcoin is the biggest redistribution of wealth in the history of mankind. And this is really something where I feel very passionate about, of being part of this movement, of changing that, the way how people are enslaved in debt and redistributing that wealth, that 95% of wealth that is kept by 5% of the global population. That's not a good split there. That needs to be way more equal, way more balanced, and people in poor countries really need to have some kind of wealth building for themselves as well, because there is enough on this planet, except if there is greed. We are right now witnessing a change in money that happened only a few times in our entire history. Barter, coins, notes, credit cards, and now Bitcoin. It's the fifth large change. The fifth large change in a monetary system, and it's happening right now. And because of the internet, because of technology, that innovation is accelerating. Bitcoin has a limited supply. Only 21 billion Bitcoin will ever be mined. With an increasing demand but a limited supply, the value can only go up. And sure, it is new. And as long as there is no mass adoption, you will have high volatility. You see it go up very quickly and then reset with 20-30%. Stabilize for 2 weeks and it starts rallying up again. That is normal for a cryptocurrency that is new because it's still experimental. Everything that's happening with Bitcoin happens for the very first time. It never happened before. And as long as we are aware of that, we can understand that we have to look long term with Bitcoin. And long term, Bitcoin is really a store of value that isn't devaluating like the euro is doing, like the dollar is doing, like the South African rand is doing, like the Indian rupee is doing. It's really powerful. Many experts predict future values of 10,000, 25,000, 100,000, 250,000, 500,000, up to even 1 million or more per coin. And these are insane amounts. I don't know if this will happen. If you would logically look at the entire market cap, the financial market cap, and only 10% of that value would be moved into Bitcoin, yes, then 1 million or more per coin could be reality. On the other hand, if that dollar is only worth 50% of its current value, that puts things a little bit more into a different perspective. So we don't know. It's all new. It is ahead of us, but it's highly interesting and it's highly fascinating. Today, Bitcoin is traded at around $7,200, and 1 year ago, that was only 1/10 of that value. Can you imagine that? 1/10 of that value just a year ago. In a system where it's impossible to ever repay the total debt that has been created, with central banks printing more and more banknotes on a daily basis, with interest on saving accounts almost to zero, soon we will be paying to be saving with your bank, with central banks running out of options to accelerate economies, it might get really bad in the banking world and doors may remain closed, ATMs may be shut down, and we were only 3 hours away back in 2008 from that happening. And do not think it will not happen in your country, because people in other countries once thought that would never happen in their country. Venezuela, Argentina, Brazil, Cyprus, Greece, Zimbabwe, and time is ticking for all other countries. Now, if you have no experience with Bitcoin yet, it is highly recommended to educate yourself. Education is the way to increase knowledge and understanding, and it will enable you to make the right decisions for you and your family. I challenge you all, and you will be able to find this challenge on the Female Wave of Change startup. I challenge you not only to download and install your own Bitcoin wallet app, but also to help at least one individual to do exactly the same. That's challenge number 1. And I want you to think about how Bitcoin and blockchain will influence your job, your business, and then share your ideas on Startup as well. I will add this challenge within a half hour after ending of this webinar to Startup, but I really invite you all to participate there, because I think that also will inspire others and help others in perceptions that they hadn't thought of yet. And that can help you prepare for a future with Bitcoin. A full course is available, Cryptocation, where everything you need to know about Bitcoin, blockchain, and cryptocurrencies is explained in a logical sequence. Cryptocation is available for a one-time $67, and you will be able to reclaim 10% of that in Bitcoin, because we really want you to experience that right away. And by purchasing Cryptocation, you will also be supporting the female wave of change, since from every course that is purchased, $20 will be donated to the foundation to support them in all their activities and all the good that they are doing. And we feel strong about that, so this was a logical step. It's a win-win offer to position yourself for a crypto future. This is the link for you to get your Cryptocation course, fwoc.cryptocation.com. I want to thank you for being here tonight, and hopefully you will be inspired now to learn more about Bitcoin, to start doing Bitcoin, and to prosper. My name is Mariska van Langenberg, and more about me on theduchess.net. Thank you all. Ingun, back to you.
Yes, well, thank you, Mariska. There's a lot of information there. It's amazing. Well, what I would like to, because we will give others to ask questions, there's still some time. What I would like to ask you is give a short introduction of who you are,
Yeah.
your background, what you have been doing to acquire all this information about this new way of money and banking and
Yep. Happy to do that.
The short version, so we have time for questions.
I'll do a short version. I have a history of 25 years in corporate life at boardroom level, where I used to be active in the finance area. Finance always has been my wheelhouse. After 25 years, I decided to switch careers. I did a study psychology just out of interest, and I entered a world of network marketing. About a year and a half ago, I joined a company that is network marketing, but also is offering mining of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And that has really inspired me to start studying on this phenomenon, Bitcoin blockchain. I became their chief compliance officer. And in August of this year, I started the master's digital currencies at the University of Nicosia, which is highly interesting. And on a daily basis, I learn more about Bitcoin. I learn more about cryptocurrencies. And I feel this drive to share this with as many people as possible. So if you know these people that never can stop talking about soccer, well, I'm the one that cannot stop talking about Bitcoin. And I love it.
Yes, I can imagine. Well, there's a lot going on, so thank you so much for all this information. It's well, what I told you before is well, I've been watching just before we started. How is my Bitcoin wallet doing? I would love to, maybe in the chat box, that people who do have Bitcoins, that you let us know in the chat box, so that we
type in yes. Yes. If you have Bitcoins, type in yes. It's just for us to get an idea. Who of you already have Bitcoin? Oh, I see yes is coming in. That's good.
Oh, good. Yes.
That's really good. And have you all learned that the fork that was announced for next week, that's cancelled? No more possible division of the Bitcoin blockchain. It's all secure, and we all go together.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people already have the Bitcoin wallet. That's good. Yeah, that's so there's well, you know, when I was listening to you, is you know, I'm almost 58 this month, and you know, I saw the mobile phone coming. you know, I had my colleagues with these huge appliances, you know, within the car and these huge batteries and taking that out of the car and, you know, and everyone was thinking they were crazy about what was happening. But it's, you know, it just happened. And I am never, ever, 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 ever going to have a mobile phone. Well, there's people who have 2 or 3 mobile phones
Yeah,
because, yes,
it's true. If you just imagine when the internet started, we had these huge computers, remember?
yeah.
No one back then could have imagined that we would carry the entire internet on half an inch of a smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that is what happened. So if you relate that back to Bitcoin and blockchain, you just know that 20 years from now, things will have been invented that will be very normal then, that we cannot even imagine right now.
Yeah. Mariska, how much money is, if you compare it to dollars or euros or whatever, how much money is invented in bitcoins right now? Invested.
Invest in Bitcoin. Oh, that's a good question. I know the total cryptocurrency market cap, that's around 200 billion right now. And that has really gone up. When I started a year and a half ago, that was around 40 billion. So from 40 to 200 billion in a year and a half is quite fast. I would have to look up what the exact market cap is right now for Bitcoin. It fluctuates when the value goes up. It has been 7,700 suddenly yesterday. Now it's gone back a bit to 7,200. That's normal. It really is volatile, and you have to be aware of that. You shouldn't panic about it. Just know, like, that's normal. That's normal market behavior. It's the psychology. We live in a century where people get into Bitcoin often also out of greed. Like, oh, it keeps rising. I need to have more and more and more. And then they buy too late, and then the reset comes. They panic and they sell. And when you sell, you have a loss. So if you have Bitcoin and the price goes up and down, just hold on to them.
Mm-hmm.
In cryptocurrency, that's called HODL. And that's a funny story. In fact, HODL was invented by someone who made a post on a forum, and he made a typo that he was planning on HODL them instead of on holding them. And as of that moment, everyone was talking about HODL. And that's really a crypto terminology. It's crypto mumbo jumbo, but everyone talks about HODL. Buy them and HODL. I always felt it was funny, and I did some research. Where's that coming from? Why don't they just say hold, but HODL? A typo.
Mm-hmm.
You only have a loss when you sell them. And if you hold them and you just be faithful that the market will go up again, that always happens. It's the same with stock. I think Warren Buffett really is very clever on that. He always says a loss on the stock market is only a loss if you sell your stock. So even with a crash on the stock market, hold on to your stock. And I also remembered having that discussion in 2008. I was in a relationship back then with a multimillionaire, and he was devastated. Like, oh, my stock lost 400,000 in value. And I looked at him and I said, so are you eating a sandwich less? Do you still have a roof over your head? Yeah. So what's your problem? That market will go up again. And he looked at me, you're right. So it's the emotion of people that make them react, not in the smartest way. And if you get into cryptocurrency, first of all, do not use your rent money to do that. Only with money that you could afford to lose, because it is experimental. We have to be aware of that. Just use 10% max of what you have to put that in Bitcoin and position yourself, because if the price continues to go up, you'll be really pulling your hair out when you realize, like, I knew about Bitcoin 2 years ago. Why didn't I get in then? Why did I resist it? Why didn't I embrace it? I could have been a millionaire right now.
Mm-hmm.
And millionaires have been created because of cryptocurrency, who simply bought for $200 of Bitcoin a few years ago. And they are loaded right now. Just buy it, hold them, hodl, and look at it in a few years' time.
A couple of years, yes.
And of course, with the business that I do, I am more involved in crypto, and with the course with Cryptocation, it has become part of my everyday life. So you keep a closer eye. But if I would get into crypto as an alternative retirement plan, I look at my retirement statements once a year when they come in by mail. That's when I look at them and I realize, like, well, that's not going to be party time by then, and I put them in a file, and that's it. So if you just have a few Bitcoin, you can turn yourself completely crazy by looking at the market value all day long. And there are people who are doing that. And they get upset and they get ulcers and lose sleep, and that's not a healthy thing. Bitcoin is very powerful, but look at it long term and look at it from a bigger perspective.
Okay. Well, Mariska, just to give others a chance, if you stop sharing your screen, we can see more people who are present tonight. So,
yep. Anyone with a question? Simply
anyone with a question, yes.
Let us know. Type it in the chat box, or if you are on camera, wave your hand so Ingo knows whom to unmute.
There has been so much information.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't see anyone with questions right now. What I loved about your story. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mariska, and thank you, everyone who was here tonight. What I loved about your story is also what Female Wave of Change is all about. You know, we are here to also embrace change and create new opportunities together. And we're doing that on a global platform. And to be able to get a payment system that we can use very fast. You know, in September, we had a speaker over from Kenya, and we had to send her money. You know, it takes forever with these banks, and it costs you a lot of extra money. If you have Bitcoin wallets, then you can just switch from one. You can have your Bitcoins from one wallet to the other in no time, and it doesn't cost you anything extra, I think.
It costs you a bit. There are transaction fees, but still it's a lot cheaper than the fees that you're paying with your banks.
Yeah.
But it's really fast. You're not limited to opening hours of a bank. And in fact, if I would invoice someone right now, I invoice them in Bitcoin, and if they insist on making a payment through fiat currency, that's fine. Then there's a markup of 20% because of delay, because of the costs.
Yeah.
And very often, especially when it's cross-border, it takes forever for money to arrive. You have to make phone calls to the various banks. Okay, cover me up for that extra time as well. And otherwise, just pay me in Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Well, we will be thinking about a system that does work for our program. Does
SpectroCoin? No, SpectroCoin does not offer a private wallet. SpectroCoin is an exchange, so they hold the private keys. SpectroCoin is really something for in and out transactions. If you want to convert into fiat or a fiat into Bitcoin, that's where you can use SpectroCoin for. But I wouldn't recommend leaving your coins or your fiat currencies in an account with an exchange.
Okay. I also see the question that Tabello asked. She's from South Africa, and where do I start? That's a good question.
It's a good question. Well, education is the first step. Of course, through fwoc.cryptocation.com. That's your first step. And I'd be happy to have another conversation with you at another time, Tabello, to help you see what options would be available for you to get started with Bitcoin. And if you're in South Africa, you feel the devaluation of the rand. And I know that Bitcoin is really hot in South Africa. so I can link you to the right communities to get your information and things like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, Tabello is our ambassador in South Africa, and it
Cool.
will really be great to get things started over there. Well, for now, Mariska, thank you very much. We will send the information about the cryptication link that you opened up for us. Thank you very much. You know,
You're
we're
welcome.
very happy to get all the income streams that we can get to get everything started here with Female Way of Change. So thank you for that. We will send it. We will post it on our Facebook page. So really, like our page, and you will get the information. We will also be sending it on a newsletter, so you will find it over there, and we'll post it on our website. So that you can get things started over there, and the next step will, I think you were already provided on that cryptication. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mariska, for all your wisdom and all your knowledge. Thank you.
I've enjoyed it.
Yes, well, so did we. Thank you, all the participants. Thank you for being here, and love to hear more of you.
Thanks, Ingun. Have a great evening, everyone, or a great day, wherever you are on this world. I see what some other continents on the attendee list as well. It was a privilege. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you.